Now, over the last year or so, I've been buying more and more shares of SVOL, or the Simplified Volatility Premium ETF. And over the last year, as I've gathered more and more shares, I've been paid handsomely as far as dividend income goes, and held onto this ETF during the different ebbs and flows throughout the market conditions. But now that I've been holding onto SVOL for a while, I wanted to make sort of a recap video and honestly go through the investment as it sits currently throughout my portfolios, talk about if I'm actually happy about it, how much money I've made as far as dividends go, and sort of backtest SVOL since I first started holding onto it around a year ago. Now, ever since my first video of SVOL, this ETF has gotten much more popular, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this video actually have this in your portfolio as of right now. So if you're interested in SVOL and want to see what's happened over the last year as far as my holdings go, make sure to drop a like down below, stick around, and let's get right into it. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the markets. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. Now, just for a simple recap for those of you guys that don't know about this ETF, and maybe have just heard about it a little bit, just to go over the basics, SVOL is known as the Simplified Volatility Premium ETF, and the ETF is as follows. And it says right here, this ETF, SVOL, seeks to provide the investment results before fees and expenses that correspond to approximately 1/5 to 3/10 of the inverse performance of the CBOE Volatility Index, or the VIX, short-term futures index, while also seeking to mitigate extreme volatility. And looking a little bit deeper into SVOL's fact sheet, it says passive inverse VIX exposure, 25% inverse VIX exposure attempts to balance the trade-off between maximizing income and minimizing drag from high volatility. Also on top of that, this is very helpful, especially when market conditions get crazy. Advanced option overlay designed to help protect short VIX exposure when market volatility spikes. And this is definitely important because as of recently, we saw the volatility index spike like we haven't seen in a very long time. Modest option budget that aims to hedge against adverse market moves, which again we saw front and centered just as of recently. Now on top of that, as of recently, it feels like this ETF has gotten very popular. It's now actually over $1 billion in total assets, and I think when I first started buying SVOL, maybe it had 200 million, so it was much smaller back then. SVOL's expense ratio is pretty pricey at 1.16%, but again, you are getting some active management, and this ETF is not very simple. Now, one of the best things about SVOL altogether is, of course, the massive distributions. And looking at SVOL's distribution history, you can see that, at least for the most part, most of the distributions, at least as far as we see right here, are sent to us as a return of capital. So SVOL not only pays a massive amount of cash flow every single month to investors, somewhere of around 30 cents every single month. But on top of that, it could be very tax efficient, at least for the most part, as we can see over the last few years. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to SVOL. This ETF actually has been performing like one of my worst nightmares. I absolutely despise different ultra high yielding ETFs and stocks for that matter that are going to pay me a massive amount of cash flow, but decay and decay over time. Now, maybe that's because I have flashbacks of buying into QYLD back in the day at around $20 per share, which is currently trading in the mid-16s. QYLD is another one that's paid a massive amount of cash flow to me very consistently over time, but as you can see right here, the actual ETF price just keeps going lower and lower, making my overall portfolio lose more and more value over time. Now, even though SVOL is in the red, this ETF still has paid a massive amount of distributions to investors, so we're going to see right here in a second if we've actually made any money off this one. But with SVOL's current trailing 12-month distribution rate, we're talking a 17.16% dividend yield. Which means with my holdings of SVOL, which remember I still have a relatively small amount of SVOL shares in my portfolios, this is still going to be a very alternative holding for my portfolio for my strategy. I currently have around 435 shares, which means that if I get paid 30 cents per share per month, I'm looking at around 130 bucks more or less every single month, which is not bad whatsoever. But again, the real damage in SVOL is of course the actual price return or lack thereof. On the 1-year time frame, SVOL is minus 8.06%. Year to date, this one is also down around 7.81%. Now, just as of recently, we saw the entire market crash, and SVOL basically crashed right with it. Now, because of that hedge, this ETF was saved from being absolutely obliterated, but still it dropped quite a bit on the day that the market crashed, which made me lose a large portion of price return. That, of course, was paper returns, but still. Now the real question still remains, has SVOL even made investors any money whatsoever? Yeah, we get it, the ETF pays around a 17% yield. That's absolutely great, whatever, but still the ETF has lost a lot as of recently as far as price return goes. So even though SVOL's total return isn't as good as it used to be now with this most recent drop, SVOL still over the last 3.24 years has returned investors, and this is with a $10,000 investment and dividends reinvested, has returned investors around 31.31% total return, or on average around 8 or 9% per year. Now keep in mind, if dividends weren't reinvested along the way, if dividends were just spent, this ETF has still returned around 7.17%, on average around 25% more or less over the last 3.24 years. So does SVOL belong in the category along with TSLY and some of the other ultra high yielders that are actually negative as far as all time goes when it comes to total return? I don't think SVOL necessarily belongs there. But because of the most recent massive volatility and the portfolio construction, SVOL still isn't necessarily offering what I was hoping that it would offer, which is around a 10 to 12% annualized per year. Now still SVOL at this point, in my opinion, is more or less like a QYLD in my portfolio. Yeah, I hold on to some shares of it. Yeah, it pays me a massive yield basically every single year. But is this investment something that I want to make the largest portion of my portfolio whatsoever? Well, absolutely not. Which is why as of right now, I still only have around 400, 500 shares of SVOL, even if that, across all my portfolios. And I'm going to still grab a share of SVOL here and there personally to average down on my shares that I currently own, and just to more or less earn that extra 30 cents, which basically every single share more or less should pay you moving forward. But more or less, SVOL is turning out to be a lot like a lot of the other ultra high yielders, which pay out a massive amount in distributions or dividends, but aren't necessarily going to hold up as far as price goes. Now, I will say, like I said a minute ago, I am impressed with SVOL holding up as well as it did during the most recent massive VIX spike, during the most recent volatility index spike, which spiked up on a single day from around 12 all the way up to around 40. So that's impressive that SVOL still was able to hold up the way that it did. But all in all, as of right now, I'm earning around $130 every single month from SVOL. I'm going to add some more shares here and there. Probably though, as tempting as it might be, I'll probably never make SVOL a position in my long-term portfolio that's over, say, 750 or 1,000 shares, because at that point, it's probably just going to be a little bit too risky long-term. Now, I will say technically over time, if you hold on to SVOL, take some of the distributions, take some of the dividends and buy more shares of SVOL, lower your cost basis. I get it. It sort of is an income play that can make sense for some investors out there. But for me specifically, I'm going to keep buying things like SPYI, like SCHD, VIG, and other things that I think are going to hold up a little bit better throughout the markets. Now, even though I've been sort of on the fence with adding another ultra high yielder like SVOL to my dividend portfolio, and this is just simply because over time I've been burnt by different ETFs and even stocks that offer massive yields, because most of the time these sort of investments seem to decay in price over time while paying out a massive amount of dividends or distributions. I still think and have hopes that SVOL will more or less trade sideways, if not down a tiny bit in the long term, and if it pays around a 15, 16, 17% yield, I'm more than happy with losing 8% or 2% on a yearly basis, at least in a small corner of my portfolio, because like I've said a million times, something like this would never make up a large portion of my specific overall portfolio just because it doesn't match my strategy perfectly. But with that said, I am still going to be building on my SVOL position a little bit larger here, but honestly not too much larger than where it is currently. So that's sort of where I'm at with SVOL, how many shares I'm holding, how much I'm earning, etc. But now lastly, most importantly, I want to hear from you guys down below. Is SVOL currently an ETF that you hold as of right now? And knowing what you know now, during the most recent performance SVOL had, are you going to buy more shares from here? Let us know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.